If you've owned a house for more than 5 minutes, somebody has probably told you the rules. Change your furnace filter every 30 days. Close the vents in rooms you don't use. Pour boiling water down a clogged drain. Pressure wash anything outside that starts turning green. And if something is still working, don't touch it. The problem is, a surprising amount of this advice is either outdated, misunderstood, or can actually cost you money. Some of it came from older houses and older equipment. Some started as decent advice and got repeated until everyone forgot the part that made it true. And some of it was probably never good advice in the first place. So here are the home maintenance myths people keep following and what you should actually be doing instead. Myth 12. You need to change your furnace filter every 30 days. That number's printed on almost every filter box, so it turned into a rule nobody questions, the same way you don't question a speed limit sign. But how fast a filter clogs depends on the filter itself, how much dust and pet hair are floating around your house, and how often the system runs. A thin filter in a house with 2 dogs and a cat might genuinely need changing every month. A thicker, higher-rated filter in a quiet, pet-free house can often go 2 or 3 times longer than that. Check the filter every month instead of blindly swapping it out on the same date no matter what. If it's visibly loaded with dust, if air seems weaker coming out of the vents, or you've hit the interval recommended for that specific filter and system, that's when you change it. 30 days can be exactly right for some houses. It just isn't a universal rule for every house. Myth 11. Closing the vents in rooms you don't use saves you money. It feels obvious. Why heat or cool a room nobody's standing in? So people shut the vent and figure they're saving on the bill. But a forced air system is built around a certain amount of air moving through the ducts at all times. Shut enough vents and that air has nowhere to go, so pressure builds up inside the ductwork instead of escaping into the closed room. That extra pressure can strain the system's fan motor and push conditioned air out through small gaps in the ducts you'll never see, which cancels out the savings you were expecting in the first place. It also means the vents you did leave open get more air than they should, so one room runs cold while another runs hot. Leave the vents open and let the thermostat do the actual work it was designed to do.
Myth 10. More insulation is always better. Insulation slows heat from moving through your walls and attic, so it's easy to assume doubling the amount doubles the benefit. It doesn't work that way. Once you've got enough insulation to do the job, adding another layer on top gives you smaller and smaller returns for the money you're spending. Meanwhile, a thin gap around a window frame or an unsealed door can leak more heat out of your house than a whole extra roll of insulation could ever make up for. That's because insulation and air sealing solve 2 different problems. Insulation slows heat from passing through your walls and attic. Sealing a gap stops outside air from getting in at all. Piling on more insulation without closing the gaps is like adding another blanket to a bed with the window wide open.
Myth 9. Your ceiling fan cools the room. A fan spinning in an empty room is doing nothing except spending electricity for no reason. Fans cool people, not air, by moving air across your skin and speeding up how fast sweat evaporates off your body. Walk out of the room and the air temperature doesn't drop even 1 degree. The fan is just circulating the same warm air around in a circle. Turn the fan off when you leave a room the same way you'd turn off a light on your way out, and it costs you nothing while you're gone. It's cooling people, not air. Myth 8. Bleach kills mold, so the problem is solved. Bleach can lift the color off mold growing on a wall or a tile, and that makes it look like the job is done. But mold shows up because moisture is getting somewhere it shouldn't, and wiping the surface clean doesn't touch that moisture at all.
If there's a slow leak inside the wall or condensation building up behind the drywall, the mold just grows back once the surface dries out, often in the exact same spot within weeks. Cleaning what you can see with bleach was never the actual problem to solve. Find where the moisture is coming from first, then deal with what's on the surface. Myth 7. Hot water washes grease safely down the drain. It sounds like solid logic.
Heat melts grease, so pouring hot water down the sink should carry it away for good. But melting the grease doesn't remove it from your plumbing. It just turns it back into a liquid long enough to travel farther down the pipe. As the water cools on its way through the system, that same grease can harden again somewhere you can't reach, and you're standing at the same sink again in a few weeks. Scrape grease into the trash instead of the sink, and treat hot water as a rinse, not a fix. Myth 6. Pressure washing is the best way to clean everything outside. A pressure washer feels like a cheat code the first time you see how fast it strips away years of dirt and grime with almost no effort. But that same force can tear soft wood fibers apart, blast paint and stain clean off a deck, and drive water behind siding panels where it was never supposed to go. Hard surfaces like concrete and brick generally tolerate pressure washing better than wood, roofing, and some types of siding, but even those depend on the pressure, the nozzle, and how close you're holding it. Wood decking, painted siding, and roof shingles are the most likely to take real damage, and it often doesn't show up until months later when the wood starts splintering or the siding starts leaking. Match the pressure and the technique to the surface, or you're paying to damage the exact thing you were trying to clean.
Myth 5. Your gutters only need cleaning once they're overflowing. Watching water pour over the edge in a storm feels like the actual warning sign, so a lot of people wait for that moment before they ever get up on a ladder. But gutters don't clog all at once. Leaves and grit pile up along the bottom of the gutter for weeks, blocking more of it a little at a time, long before you ever see water spill over the edge. By the time water is pouring over the edge, water's already running down the siding, pooling at the base of the house, and soaking into the wood right behind the gutter. Clean the leaves out of the gutter while it's still just leaves sitting in a trough, not after water's already pouring over the edge onto the ground below. Myth 4. If the smoke detector beeps when you press the button, you're good. Pressing that button only tells you the battery and the speaker still work. It doesn't tell you the actual smoke sensor inside the unit is still reliable after years of dust and use. Smoke detectors have a manufacture date stamped right on the back of the unit, and most models are rated for around 10 years before the sensor starts to degrade, though the exact number depends on the type of detector and the manufacturer. Take the unit off the ceiling and flip it over to check the date. If you don't already know how old it is, it's probably older than you think. Myth 3. Your water heater doesn't need maintenance until something goes wrong. A water heater sits in a corner of the basement or a closet doing its job quietly for years, so it's easy to forget it's there at all until it fails. Inside the tank, minerals in the water settle to the bottom over time and build up as a layer of sediment on the tank floor. That sediment forces the heater to work harder to heat the same amount of water, and over the years it can shorten how long the tank actually lasts. Most manufacturers recommend draining a portion of the tank periodically, though exactly how often depends on your water and your specific heater, so check the manual instead of guessing.
Myth 2. Your dryer vent is fine as long as the dryer still works. Cleaning the lint screen after every load feels like enough, and for a while it genuinely is. But the lint screen only catches part of the lint. The rest travels down the exhaust duct that runs from the back of the dryer to the outside wall of the house. Over months and years, that duct can pack solid with lint you never see, which cuts down airflow and creates a real fire risk inside the wall. Check the full exhaust path regularly, not just the lint screen, since how often it needs attention depends on the duct's length and how often you run the dryer. Pull the duct off the back and look inside it at least once. If it's packed with lint, your dryer's been working harder than it should for a lot longer than you think, and the risk has been sitting there the whole time. Myth 1. If there's no visible damage, your house is fine. Homes rarely announce an expensive problem all at once. They start small, a bead of caulk pulling away from a window frame, a shingle starting to curl up at the edge, a faint stain spreading in the corner of a ceiling. None of those look urgent on their own, which is exactly why they get ignored until the small problem quietly turns into a big one. Walk around your house every season and look for the small stuff, not just the obvious stuff, before the small stuff decides to become the obvious stuff on its own. Home maintenance was never really about fixing broken things. It's about catching things before they get the chance to become broken things in the first place. And most of the expensive problems in a house don't start expensive. They get expensive while you're ignoring them. Your house isn't the only thing full of rules like this. Your car has been running on the same kind of secondhand advice for decades, and most of it is just as wrong. That's the next video.